Information Station 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
Diamonds in the sunset, now your time has come. A pretty yellow bird fly away into the sun. Don't look down.
All right, thank you for tuning in. 5 minutes after 11 o'clock, and we were talking earlier to a young couple who had a 3-year-old son, and it was reminding me of when my own son was younger, and the years we spent as he grew up together. He's now 27 years old. I have some of my fondest memories of traveling with him, and even though, most of the year, 365 days is how long the year is, probably 330 of them were not traveling as far as any long distances. But we went on these road trips now and then, and man, they are some of my fondest memories. Perhaps contributed to the bond that we have. I would like to think there would have been a bond anyway, but clearly it made a difference. Clearly it's part of who I am. David W. Berner is speaking to my heart, I guess, when we talk about his book. It is called Any Road Will Take You There. It is a journey of fathers and sons, and it goes more than just the road trips that I was implying right there. By the way, he's got some list of credentials, Robin.
Yeah.
He's an award-winning journalist, and what does it say here? A broadcaster, so he does what we do. He's an author, a teacher. His first book, Accidental Lessons, was awarded the 2011 Royal Dragonfly Grand Prize for Literature. His broadcast reporting and audio documentaries have been aired on CBS, NPR, and it goes on and on and on from there. He's won a bunch of awards, so rather than read everything, let's just say hi to him and find out about the book. Any Road Will Take You There, A Journey of Fathers and Sons. David W. Berner. Good morning, David.
Well, Larry, thank you, Robin. Thank you so much. I feel humbled by the words you say there. I always feel a little embarrassed when I hear that, but it's really nice to be here. Thank you.
Well, we have a lot in common, actually. Where are you? Where are you calling from?
Well, I'm in Chicago right now, and I'm actually doing some reporting work at this moment on a story up here, some freelance work. So I had some time to speak with you, and I'm glad to be able to do that.
Who's before we find out about, I'm kind of doing things backwards here, but who do you think is the audience of this particular book?
Well, that's funny because when you're a writer, you're always kind of thinking of that. I mean, I'm one of those kind of writers who doesn't necessarily say, okay, I want to write a book that people love, people who are zombie and vampire lovers, which seems to be the thing these days. But if that, I don't tend to do that. I don't tend to write to a market. But to answer your question, I really do believe that, it's really, I think it really resonates with men, young men, older men, men of all ages. But I also think it resonates very well, and I've had feedback in this way that helps me understand this. It resonates very well with women, in that women sometimes see men as reticent. So, people who don't talk a lot or don't get deep into their feelings.
Right.
And this book sort of pulls some of that out, I think. Some feelings and some hidden emotions. I've had a lot of women who've bought the book for the men in their lives. So it's interesting.
Well, that is interesting. We get accused of not liking the chick flick.
Yeah, that's wrong.
I don't know. I mean, even the toughest guy is, unless he's really so hardened that you can't get through to him. I just think we're all human. So I don't know that being a guy or being a woman is really necessarily making us all that different.
No,
I'm reluctant to say it, actually, but. All right. So what I'm often finding amazing when we have an author who's got a book, and the way you described answered my audience question was very good. I love the way you answered it, because it's almost like, do you know if you see a movie played in reverse? Let's say there's a movie played in reverse and everything is in order, and then it all explodes and goes everywhere, and then you play it in reverse and it all goes to the exact right place it's supposed to go, which is almost like a book.
Yeah.
I find this interesting, that there's almost this mystical thing that happens when a book is entered into the world of our collective consciousness, how it finds the right people.
Well, that's very interesting, because I think that when you look at this book and you read you see the trailer, you read a little bit about it. I mean, it is a road story. Don't get me wrong. It's a iconic sort of American road story. But when you read the book, I think you find out that it's really not very linear. I mean, that there is a thread that the travel goes on, but that it jumps around a little bit in terms of a man's life, and that really is how we act. I mean, we don't go through our day. Certainly we have a plan for the day most of the time, not always, but we know what we're going to do and where we're going to go and what we're going to get done. But our thoughts jump around all the time, and I think that's what happens when you're on a road trip. You're in that confined space, and it's sort of an incubator for all those kinds of things that may not have been talked about.
Right. So who was the driver?
Yeah. Well, most of the time I was the driver,
you were the
but
driver.
not all the time. My friend Brad did some driving too, but I would say I probably did most of the driving. He drove through some of the more treacherous areas, like the Rocky Mountains, which he's used to. Try driving an RV, which was the vehicle we used, through the Rockies when you've never done that before. That's a little bit hairy.
Or through Manhattan. I mean, I've often thought.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, both areas of the country, I would have a hard time with. So your two sons and you two guys, and that's it.
That was it. It was the four of us. It stems from the trip actually started from my love of Jack Kerouac's On the Road. That's always been sort of a part of my young life, my coming of age kind of book. And I was in a place in my life where I needed to kind of rekindle, respark.
Right.
And I reread On the Road and felt a little rejuvenated and thought it would be kind of fun to do this. But then I also found this photograph, which was a remarkable photograph that was buried in a drawer in a chest in my mother's living room. It was 4 generations of men, meaning it was me at about 5 or 6 years old, my dad, his dad, and my great-grandfather, all 4 of us together. And I asked my mother, what's the deal? Why isn't this framed and out somewhere? It seems a remarkable photograph. And therein lied a story that I had not known a lot about, which was some of the difficulties my dad had with his father. And because of that discovery of the photograph, I started to sort of re-examine myself as a dad, where I was and how I reacted and my relationship with my own father. And I felt that this road trip would be a place to sort of re-examine that. Plus, On the Road itself has a couple of threads in it that really is about fatherhood. And it seemed to connect. And my editor, actually, my agent actually said, this is making sense. Which is something I may not do all the time, and she liked the idea, and it just made sense to write it in that form. And it's a true story. It really happened. We went to 5,000 miles. We had good and bad happen, and we had a lot of discussion and talks and revelations and new experiences.
Wow!
So
and
it's a kind of book that I think people understand, because I heard a quote many years ago, and I never remember who said this, and I wish I could give it credit. But someone said, there's nothing in the world that can't be fixed with a highway and a full tank of gas.
Oh, I like it. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's sort of the iconic American road trip, sort of
5,000 miles, is that right?
Taking care of you. 5,000 miles, yeah.
5,000 miles.
What was your son receptive to the idea at first, or did you have to convince him?
Well, I have to tell you, I was at a book reading the other night for the book in a bookstore, and I read a section that kind of tells you that both of my kids were up for the adventure. They're both sort of adventurous types, and they were 15 and 13 at the time, so they were right in that age where they felt like they could do no wrong, and it was a good place for them. But I asked them, I said, this thing is fueled by the spirit of Jack Kerouac. Do you know who Jack Kerouac is? And they kind of knew, but I was afraid. They may have thought he was Jack Kevorkian.
Oh,
yeah, big difference.
And they kind of laughed when I worried that was the case. They knew who he was because he was kind of a big name at the time, the Suicide Doctor, of course.
Right.
So, there was some concern that they really didn't know what they were getting into.
So when was this? What year was this?
This was my kids are now 22 and 20, so this was at least 6 years ago.
Okay.
7 years ago, the actual trip took place. Yeah.
Where did you start?
We started in Chicago.
Chicago.
We went to Denver because Denver is a key nuclear sort of point in the book On the Road, so it made a lot of sense. And there were a lot of places there that are linked to the book. I mean, the book is autobiographical. It's called a novel, but it really is autobiographical on the road.
Right.
And Denver is a keen place. You went to San Francisco. Of course, that's a keen place. You went down the coast over into Santa Fe, Arizona, wonderful places like that.
So 4 guys in the car. How old were you again? And how old? Brad is your friend. How old are you and Brad?
I was 49 at the time, and Brad was 47.
Okay.
Right.
So big difference in the ages of you two and your 2 sons. Did you? One of the chapters is called ukulele. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we were arguing, which I think happens all the time when you go on a road trip with friends or family. You start to, I don't know if argue is the right word, but you have disagreements about the music that's being played in the car.
Right. Right.
Well, we were at that point where, I was in my classic rock stage at that moment, and even though I'm open to new music, but this was at the time.
Right.
And I was listening to some things that maybe my kids weren't totally into, although some of the stuff they liked.
Right.
So they kept asking me, why are we listening to this stuff? And I kind of reiterated why it was important to me. But then I started thinking, it came into my head, this thing about my dad. My dad was not an accomplished musician, but he could play 2 songs on the ukulele that were absolutely fantastic.
Nice.
And he really could play them well. And one was 5'2", Eyes Are Blue, Coochie Coochie Coo, that old sort of ragtime.
We like that one, yeah.
Ragtime song from the Depression era. And he was he could play them really well. And my dad absolutely loved the fact that he could do that and could be a performer. Now, my dad was not a natural performer, but when he was playing the ukulele, he came alive. When he was dying, and they died of prostate cancer. When he was dying, his ukulele kind of sat in the corner of the room, in their living room, my parents' living room, collecting dust. And I picked it up one night when I was there, sort of waiting for him to die, and I had it in my lap, and I had a chance to sort of bang around it. I play a little guitar, so I could figure some of it out. And it just reminded me of the sort of the connections that we make with the people that we love that don't always resonate until we start to see what it means to us personally. So I've always been a musician. I've liked music. I've loved music. But I never made the real connection between my father and I with music until that moment.
Oh, wow.
And I think that that's really what happens to us, is that if we don't take the time, and that's the wonderful thing this road trip did, give us the time to sort of reflect and resonate all these things in our heads. We don't really understand how much they really mean.
Wow. The book, again, is called Any Road Will Take You There, A Journey of Fathers and Sons. And I love the title because now that we've heard what we've heard, I think we understand what you mean by that.
Yeah.
You could have gone anywhere. But you could have gone any when, too. You could have taken it earlier in the children's lives. You could have done it again. Have you done it again?
No, we've talked about doing it again, especially with my kids becoming young men now. I think it might be something that we would reconsider. And we might do it in a different way or for a different reason.
So where were you sleeping? Were you sleeping in Motel 6s or campgrounds? Where were you?
Well, we were at campgrounds. We slept in the RV. We did one night. We got really, really tired of sleeping on hard floors and campgrounds, and we did get into a hotel room, but it was in Provo, Utah, and they had a massive electric outage. And we were living in hotel rooms that had no air conditioning for one night. So it really didn't help matters. But it was a kind of a mixture, to answer your question.
A 40-something-year-old man often will talk about the past. A 15-year-old boy will talk about the future.
Well, that's really good. That's true.
Did those conversations happen? Were you able to? I don't know. Were they able to listen to your past, or were you able to listen to their future?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I think it did happen. I think there was some reluctance on their part. I don't know if either of you have children, but there's a point in their lives, especially when they're teenagers, that everything their parents say is a load of crap. And that's what they believe, And it's just a phase they're going to go through, and that's what's going to happen. And they were sort of in that phase, like they were really getting tired of Dad talking about something in the past or how it linked to something that they were going through. At some point that gets old to them, and I totally understand that. But I think we broke through that a little bit when we had, again, this incubator, this big tin can of a vehicle, which is the worst vehicle to take anywhere in the history of the world. But this tin can just sort of incubated that, and I think they got through that. And your question about me looking at their future, I think a parent, I don't want to say necessarily a good parent, because I'm not sure what that really means, but a parent who cares has got one eye on the kid at the present and one eye on the kid in the future. The parents are always looking at the next step for their kids.
Because you went through it.
Yeah, exactly. And they're expecting something to happen because they went through it,
right.
or they're always looking out for the better,
right.
to see that they'll get something better than you had. So I do think that we were able to do that, but I do think it took a little bit of chipping away at the brick wall to get to it. I think that's true.
Was Brad able to express his opinions and views throughout the road trip also to, express his memories and his hopes for the future?
Oh, well, absolutely, because that was one of the reasons we decided to take it. Brad and I were in similar places in our lives where we were sort of reinventing ourselves a little bit, what we were going to do next, in a lot of different ways, and he was too. He had a restaurant. He'd sold the restaurant. He was going to culinary school. He wasn't sure what he was going to do with that. He wanted to try to find his new place in the world, and he was in a very similar spot. So, and he had just lost his father like I had, so we were in a very similar spot. And we talked a lot. We talked a lot about what it meant. There was a joke that runs throughout the book about throughout these 5,000 miles, if we were going to at some point find clarity. We kept saying to each other at points along the way, so have you found it yet? And we both said no.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I don't know if that's something that just goes off like a light switch, but we did do that.
You saw Muhammad Ali at an airport. Tell that story.
Oh my goodness, yeah. This was. I've worked in broadcasting and been a reporter for years, and I've interviewed all kinds of people, so I'm not necessarily starstruck. But there's something about Muhammad Ali. There's just something about that man.
Right.
And we were in an airport. I was taking my sons to a trip to Oregon. I was doing a freelance story about travel, and I decided to bring them with me. And we were waiting at the airport. It was just one of those typical mornings. They were, eating their McDonald's breakfast, and I was drinking coffee. And I looked up, and there was Muhammad Ali coming on they were pulling him down a cart. He was sitting on the cart, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we caught each other's eye, and he winked at me, just to sort of, in his way, say, "You know who I am. Thanks for noticing me." You could just tell that's all it meant. And he winked at me, and I stood there sort of dumbfounded. And I turned to my children and my guys, and I said, "Guys, that's Muhammad Ali. That's Muhammad Ali." And
wow.
They were like, "Oh yeah, he's that boxer or something, right?"
No.
Clear. Yeah, they weren't completely clear about it. They knew the name and they kind of knew the whole story,
right.
but not everything, and certainly not what he meant to this sort of sports world and the cultural world in the late 60s and early 70s. I mean, it was amazing. So, I watched him, and I watched him go down the hallway in the airport. But what it did remind me of regarding my father is that my father was an amateur boxer when he was a young boy, when he was a young man in his teens, and he used to practice in his basement. And my father, tried to teach my young son when he was very young about, sort of like the professional way to box. And
right.
So this made this really strange connection about this accidental moment in time to catch Muhammad Ali, but yet the connection with my father that was something I hadn't really thought about.
Wow.
Did you keep the same persona throughout your trip? Because being a person who interviewed a lot of people who came across different scenarios, you must have had a work kind of persona and a private kind of persona. Did the both intermingle throughout the trip, or did you just have the personal one?
That's a really good question, because I think sometimes I got too much in reporter mode. Mm-hmm. And I was, sort of observing and not living it. And I had to catch myself a couple of times. Or I would ask questions of my sons that were too reporter-like,
oh, no.
And, Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think that's, it's part of who I am. So it's hard to just completely shake it.
Right.
But my son is a wonderful photographer, and he was, even at that age, he was good, and he was doing a lot of that at the time. And I used to tell him to just put that camera down sometimes because I didn't want him to be just observing the trip all the time. I wanted him to live it. And that was hard to do. So I think I had to do that too.
That's very wise. I had that same experience when I was younger and video cameras first came out. I went to Disney World and I had this gigantic video camera and a thing strapped to around my neck that went down by my hip. Mm-hmm. And I remember the whole trip was done and I said, I don't think I was in Disney World. I think I was behind this camera the whole time. Yeah, I told myself never again. But nowadays with the tiny little cameras, I guess you can do it.
It's a little bit different now.
Did you document it? Obviously, you've documented it as a book. Did you document it with photographs, or did your sons do that part?
My son, Casey, the older of the two, actually put together a documentary film about the thing.
Wow!
And it was, it was one of his first real attempts at such a thing. He did get it in a couple of small film festivals, though, which I was really proud of him. But it basically is this story about, Brad and I sort of getting on the road and trying to figure out what's next. He did a very nice job of it. So in that way, yes, we have that stuff. We have photographs and that sort of thing. Yeah, that was part of the familial kind of thing.
I think the gift that you gave your two sons, and I don't mean to bring up something morbid, but that day that your two sons are waiting for you to die, that, as you just described you with your dad, this will come up. This trip will come up, even if it's not for decades in the future. It'll come up. And I hope it does. I hope it resonates in the way they want it to. I don't want to force it on them. Oh, I'm sure it will.
You know what I mean. I hope it resonates in the way that's important to them. And I want to make a point really clear here. The fact that I took a road trip with my sons is not terribly unique. People do this sort of thing all the time. The fact that I took 5,000 miles may be a little unique, and the fact that I linked it to Jack Kerouac certainly makes it unique. But a road trip is so ingrained in our culture. A road trip is iconic to America, and it still is, even when gas is $4. I think that part of it, you can do this, and it can be something that reawakens you and your family and all kinds of your friends or any people you want to take along the way.
Did you run into any trouble along the way? Is there any of that? Like, maybe a bear comes up to you or a Hell's Angels guy or something like that?
Well, we didn't have a bear or Hell's Angel. We did have, however, some really big bugs in one campground in I think it was Arizona. They just came out at night, and I'm not sure what they were because I'm not that familiar with desert life. But they were literally like all over sleeping bags. So we had that problem. That was not fun. It was like a bad movie. So nothing that was life threatening. But we did have an incident. We did have an incident that was funny, and it's outlined in the book that. I'll say this because I think there's a statute of limitations, so I won't be arrested. But we were in the RV, and it was late, and we were almost always late to campgrounds, and we were trying to get to this place, and we decided to buy a grill somewhere, just a small, one kind of those typical one night kind of grills that you could use just to make some hamburgers. So we pulled into this place somewhere in California, and bought a grill. Well, we also bought a bottle of wine. And my buddy and I were driving, and he's pouring wine into a cup while we're driving, which is totally illegal. And my younger son, is trying to screw together while the vehicle is moving, trying to screw together with a knife because we didn't have a screwdriver to put together this grill. So, he's falling down with a knife in his hand. We're drinking wine, and that was not really a good thing to be doing. But we were at a point where we just needed a break.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have some great memory.
And even my son kind of jokes about that. It's like, what kind of dad were you at that moment? And I said, well, it wasn't like we were out of control, but we were kind of pushing it a little bit. So,
being a college professor, you see children's personalities in transition from being in their parents' home, and now all of a sudden they're on their own and they're trying to figure out what they want to do. Have there been any times when you've seen some students that you might have suggested this to because they might have confided in you, or you might have overheard that they were going through a little bit of rocky road themselves with their parents?
Yeah, it's funny. I've talked about the trip, and most of my students in college certainly know about it because they know my work, I think. But, they are the ones many times, meaning the college students, many are the times who want to bring up road trips. I don't bring it up. I mean, it's still ingrained in the culture. And for them, when they get a chance to, from Chicago, when they get a chance to, say, drive, up to Minnesota or something, which is 7 or 8 hours from here, that's a road trip. They're excited. It's a cool thing. They're psyched.
Right.
And they see it as a fun sort of extrovert, introvert kind of mixture to drive up there. And they're the ones who bring it up. So I think it's very much still part of our culture. And I certainly don't have, I'm not some kind of road guru. But, I just think that it's it's so ingrained in our culture, and it's still there. I mean, it's still a wonderful way to rediscover yourself in a lot of ways.
I think you're right. Yeah, any road will take you there. Took me there. It actually, I was able to live vicariously through David and be in his shoes more or less, and put myself back in my own time warp and remember some of the trips that I've been on. Any road will take you there. I have a copy of the book from David Berner. If you would like the copy I have, give me a call. I'll put your name on it. It'll be waiting for you here at the Paddock Mall, by the way.
Yeah.
And so we need to ask, how do the rest of us go get it to buy it? Do you have a website?
Oh, certainly. The website is davidwberner.com, but the easiest way to get the book, and I'm a lover of bookstores, but the easiest way to get the book is Amazon. You can find it there. It's easy to get. You can get it in a day, that kind of thing. If you're really a bookstore lover, the bookstore should have it. If they don't have it, they can order it. But either way, is certainly Amazon's the easiest. The bookstore can be done also.
All right. David, thank you so much for being on the air with us. You've inspired me to take another road trip. I don't know who I guess I'll take my dog with me. I'm not sure.
There you go. She'll love
it. Won't be the
right
same. It won't be the same. David, thank you so much. Have a great... next time there's another book, come on. You're definitely welcome to come back.
Well, this was wonderful. Larry and Robin, you guys have been a delight. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a little break, and we'll be right back.
Up-to-date news and topics.
Phoenix Promotional Solutions, your company supplier of banners, digital decals, yard signs, and magnetic signs. Where you give them approved artwork by noon, the next day by 4 p.m., you pick up your banners, digital decals, yard signs, and magnetic signs. Phoenix Promotional Solutions, 368-2404. That's 368-2404. Don't forget, they do vehicle wraps also. Phoenix Promotional Solutions, 368-2404.
Hi, I'm Yvette, and I'm here to tell you a few things about ABC Frederick's Appliance. They sell not only new, but used guaranteed appliances. When you call ABC Frederick's Appliance, they will provide service on what they sell and any appliances that you own. ABC Frederick's Appliance is located in Bellevue, right over the railroad tracks. Call 352-629-5181. That's 352-629-5181. That's 352-629-5181. ABC Frederick's Appliance.
Hello all, Joe Martone here for Karaoke Time. You hear me each morning for the segment of Fun with Joe? Well, fun is what I do. So the next time you want to have a get-together, for just about any reason, give me a call. 470-0276 for Karaoke Time. That number is 470-0276. Everybody likes to sing, and with the words on the screen, it's just that much easier. Call Karaoke Time, 470-0276 for the next event, big or small. Karaoke Time can keep the fun in your business, too.
Here are today's headlines from the source WOCA. The Florida Highway Patrol is reporting that a 20-year-old man died yesterday from injuries sustained in a 3-vehicle accident at the intersection of Southwest 47th Avenue and Southwest 20th Street. The man is identified in the report as Angel David Guevara Arenas.